will be available on our website. I will make sure to put that link in the chat, as well as any other relevant links that Jody and Megan discuss. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to our presenters to introduce themselves and to get started. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Jody Gorenflow. Some of you I've had contact with, so some of you know me. My full title is Probation Mental Health Systems Liaison for Oakland Community Health Network. Today is the second webinar in our Serving Individuals with Criminal Justice Involvement webinar series. And today we're going to be talking about jail, Oakland County Jail, and courts. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Okay, so this is the sequential intercept model, and the sequential intercept model, which some of you might have logged on to the first webinar, we talked about it a little bit there as well. The sequential intercept model, it's a national model that was developed by Policy Research and Associates, and it's used to inform community-based responses to cases that involve individuals that have mental health and substance use disorder that come into contact with the criminal justice system. And at Oakland Community Health Network, we have used the sequential intercept model in the development of various justice initiatives and functions and roles. And some of these are exactly what we're going to talk about today. Our first webinar focused on diversion, and that webinar, all of the webinars will be available via recordings. But today we're going to talk about Intercept 2 and Intercept 3. Next slide, please. So our providers, you are vital partners in the application of the sequential intercept model. Even if you haven't been familiar with it in the past, you are definitely vital partners in working with us on our initiatives and these functions and these roles that we've developed. So the goals of the model are to decriminalize mental illness. We don't want individuals in jail, in prison, tied up with court cases, just because they have mental health problems. And this sort of manifests in a lot of different ways. We have super utilizers who are arrested for being homeless, for trespassing. We have petty crimes. And then we have individuals who commit higher level crimes, really based on the underlying mental health illness that they have. And so we want to make certain that individuals have access to services, that they're participating, and that they have access to the resources so that their mental illness does not manifest itself in them committing crimes. Excuse me. So what we've done is we've developed options sort of at each point along the sequential intercept model that diverts individuals from continued criminal justice involvement. And we're going to talk about those partnerships throughout this webinar, and we talked about it a little bit in diversion. Our diversion webinar focused heavily on law enforcement and diverting individuals before they are arrested and taken into custody. So that is actually a really vital component of the sequential intercept model too. But today we're going to talk about the courts and the jail portion of it. We also want to make sure that we engage individuals and in treatment, and that we offer supports in the communities. And we're going to talk about how our liaisons are able to do that and what resources that we are able to provide to individuals that are in our county, that are already participating in services, that need to engage in services, and even individuals that potentially need to participate in services in a different county. Next slide, please. So we work with our internal and our external community partners to achieve all these things, and this is what we want to achieve. And when we say internal and external, we mean providers, we mean all of our justice partners, our community partners, our homeless shelter, Honor Community Health. We have a lot of partners in the community that we work with, and these initiatives are really practiced across all of the intercepts of the sequential intercept model. We work hard for cross-system collaboration, and we coordinate between our initiatives. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about how our liaisons work together to achieve really this best practice of communication and coordination. We work to identify people with mental health and substance use disorder needs wherever they are in the community. And again, that could be at the homeless shelter, that could be at Hope, that could be at a hospital emergency department, at Common Ground, at a scene of a crime. We just want to make certain that all of our partners, our liaisons, that we're identifying people that haven't already been identified, and that we also identify people that are currently engaged in services, and that we need to inform their provider that this is happening in their lives. We always want to provide access to treatment, including co-occurring needs. So this isn't 100% mental health focused, but of course it is mental health heavily focused, but also substance use disorder needs. And it includes individuals who have both of those, who need mental health services or are already engaged in what they could be engaged in one, they could be engaged in both. Maybe they're not engaged in either. So we want to make sure that we identify them and that we offer and that we provide access to treatment, whatever modality they need. We want to help individuals link to benefits that will support them in their treatment success. This includes applying for Medicaid, Social Security. We do have resources, including our RISE Center, where individuals can go if they aren't already engaged in services, that they can go and they can get assistance doing that. Our liaisons that can also assist in doing that. But we want to make sure that everybody that needs linkage to benefits will be able to achieve that. And information sharing. This is really at the heart of what we do. We want to make sure that we share as much information as we can for optimum outcomes. We want to make sure that we're alerting our providers when an individual is in jail or they've been arrested or they potentially are facing a long prison sentence or they need a forensic exam. It is what we do. It is what our liaisons do, and we really work together, I think, very harmoniously on the justice team to make sure that individuals that end up in custody or arrested on probation, parole, in pretrial services, that we share communication with each other so that we can achieve maximum outcomes, and we can make sure that we're helping them engage in treatment, re-engage, that we alert their providers, and basically we just want to help them avoid further criminal justice involvement. Next slide, please. So today's presentation, it's focused on the partnerships that we have with our justice entities and also with our provider network, all of our providers, our case managers, the supervisors, the therapists, everybody in our provider network, and our justice entities. And so basically, again, like I mentioned, we just want to make sure that we're identifying mental health concerns at the various intercepts when we come in contact with individuals that have criminal justice involvement. And we want to make sure that we're assisting them so they don't further penetrate the system, meaning we don't want them to be homeless and not engaging in mental health services, not having access to the resources that they need, so that they're out committing more crimes that are potentially, again, like super utilizers, the exact same crimes that they have been committing. And the police come out and they potentially, this is just an example, they potentially come out to the scene and they don't want to arrest them, but it might be the third or fourth or fifth time that they've been there. And so they feel like at that point, they don't have any option but to arrest them. And so we work really hard at diversion. And again, resource connection and engagement in services is just really at the heart of what we do and what we want to make sure, because we feel as though, and our data proves it, that providing access to services, engagement, follow-up, case management to a point, it really does increase uh, increase the it increases access, but it also reduces recidivism, and that's important for individuals. We don't want them to continue to commit crimes. What we consider when we are doing this is we take into consideration when we meet individuals in the community, no matter where they are, whether it's in the community or jail, we want to take into consideration their mental health concerns and their diagnoses, no matter where we come into contact with them. So This could be in group homes, in the community, in the county jail, local lockups at police departments, courts, and probation and parole offices. We just want to make sure that we explore all the information that's relevant to their case. Where do they live? Are they homeless? Are they at risk of homelessness? Do they have legal involvement that is extensive? Are they in jail awaiting a forensic exam? Do they have physical health needs, like integrated health needs? Do they obviously have mental health issues and needs? Do they have other social service needs? Do they need connection to other agencies? Do they have open CPS cases, that sort of thing? We also take into consideration their history, and predominantly, of course, we worry about and we are concerned with their mental health history and their substance use disorder history, the treatment that they have participated in. Hospitalizations. Have they been hospitalized before? How many times have they been hospitalized? Have they ever been ordered to assisted outpatient treatment or Kevin's Law? Have they ever participated in ACT at the provider level? So, do they have those high level needs? Have they had them in the past? Have they ever left treatment, like substance use disorder treatment, against medical advice? So, we take into consideration their history as a whole. And then we also want to focus on their case plan, and we focus on it as a whole. What kinds of needs do they have? What kinds of resources will assist them in as many life domains as possible? Do they need to apply for Medicaid or Social Security? Do they need food? Do they have those basic things like food, housing? Maybe they've been referred from CPS. Maybe they have an open CPS case and they need to connect with parenting classes. Maybe they need extensive mental health treatment. Maybe they need crisis intervention. Do they have substance use disorder needs that are high level? Are they using heroin? Have they been drinking alcohol extensively? Do they need to get connected to support groups? Clothing? Do they have employment assistant needs? Do they need help applying for social service benefits like food stamps? And lastly, do they have out of county needs? And I know I mentioned this already, but having out of county needs is something that we also address, particularly when individuals are in jail. And our liaisons will work with individuals and help give them the information they need that we have compiled for out of county resources as well. Next slide, please. So this is intercept 2. So this is the intercept. We're going to talk about 2 and 3 today. So this is the first one we're going to talk about. And intercept 2 deals with initial detention and pretrial. And initial detention basically means when an individual is arrested. They could be arrested anywhere in the community. They could be taken to a police department and be held at a police department in the police department's lockup, potentially overnight. Most police departments don't prefer to keep individuals in their lockup. They prefer, if they're going to be overnight, to transfer them to the county jail. But every now and then you will have an individual who spends a night in a lockup at a local police department. And then it also deals with what happens between that time, whether they're at the local lockup or they go to Oakland County Jail, and then what's going to happen at their initial court hearing. And so what we do at this stage is we try to identify individuals that have mental health and substance use disorder needs. And then we try to coordinate with our liaisons and the functions and roles that we have with the jail services, which I'm just going to touch on briefly as well, and then our community providers. And so this is sort of that time, again, when an individual is arrested and they're taken into custody and they potentially have a first court appearance. Now, just for information, in Michigan, an individual must be arraigned within 72 hours of their initial detention. And so what that means is that an individual cannot be held in jail for longer than 72 hours without having a first court appearance. And the arraignment portion is the court hearing where an individual stands before a judge and the judge tells them what charges they are being charged with, what crimes they're being charged with. So that must take place within 72 hours. And that is that initial detention period between, again, the time that they're arrested and the time that they appear for arraignment. Next slide, please. So again, my title is probation mental health systems liaison. And originally my position was created to come into play at intercept 4 and 5. But then when I came on board, we realized that there was this gap here in information sharing and need for individuals that were taken into custody and were had pending court hearings, even if it was not just the first court appearance, but subsequent court appearances. And that my position really came into play here as well. So what I do is I promote information sharing between as many people as possible when it comes to a case. How this comes into play a lot of my business comes from business, quote unquote, comes from pretrial services. And so pretrial services in Oakland County, they are a body that interviews individuals that have been identified for some reason after their initial arrest for an in-depth interview by a pretrial service officer. The pretrial service officer interviews them, whether it's at the jail. There is a team embedded at the jail for pretrial services, and there's also pretrial service investigators that are stationed at at courts and lockups around the county. They meet with individuals, they do an interview, and then basically they send me an email or they provide a phone call and they say, look, Jane Doe was arrested last night. She's going to be in jail. She has mental health concerns. She had a suicide attempt 2 months ago. Her boyfriend reported this. She said she hasn't been on medications, whatever. They provide as much information as they're able to. Then I look the individual up to find out if they're open with a provider. And if they are open with a provider, I call the provider and I alert the provider, look, this individual is currently in custody and they're facing this and the bond information is this and they can be released if they pay this much bond, this kind of information. So whatever the pretrial service officer provides to me as far as information, that's the information that I am going to provide to whoever is their case manager, their therapist, whoever's involved in the case, the supervisor. Some of you who are logged in here, you may have gotten those calls from me to let you know that you have an individual that's currently in custody. Sorry, excuse me, that's currently in custody, and that I'm alerting you that they're there and that you might not have known that they were there because it might have just happened or for whatever reason. Also, then I potentially can get some information on their first court appearance, their arraignment, and then potentially what happens after this. And this really is the big part of my job, which is case consultation that I provide, and I offer it to providers, justice partners, all of our justice partners, courts, judges, other court staff, family members, attorneys on cases, probation and parole officers, really any other interested parties, anybody who calls me and says, Jody, we get referrals from NAMI. Anybody who calls me and says, Jody, can you help me figure out what's happening? What my individual, I'll just give you an example. I have an individual, my son is in jail, and the judge says he can't get released until he has a forensic exam. Well, then I can kind of walk them through what is going to happen in the forensic exam process. I did work as a probation officer at the district court level for 10 years, so I'm very familiar with the court process. And so this is a big part of what I do, which is offer case consultation on what providers, family members, even attorneys, what they can expect as far as what's going to happen next in the court appearance, what's going to happen next in the court process. I can never predict what a judge is going to do. I can never predict what probation officers or parole officers are going to recommend, but I can certainly provide guidance on what family members and what other interested parties can expect next in the process. And a lot of times I follow these cases because the family members, particularly, we'll just use that as an example, they will call me multiple times and they'll say, well, this happened. This court appearance happened. This court appearance happened. Jody, what's going on? And so I offer guidance on how to call courts, what to ask the courts when they call, and what information would be important for them to be able to share with a judge or an attorney so that they could intervene as far as the case goes. And I do a lot of talking as well about what information would be helpful for them to know. And then the provider part is huge too, because providers oftentimes say, Jody, can you tell me what's going to happen next? What should I do? Should I keep them open? Should I close them out? Will they be there for a long time? What can I do to help them to let the judge know that they are participating in services, they are med compliant, they are doing what they need to do? So I really offer case consultation on both sides. And obviously, the entire purpose of what I do is just to promote as much information sharing as I can to help the individual make certain that they're not ending up in jail or prison for something that they can't control, for their mental health, or for simply just information just not being available to the judge or the parole officer or the probation officer. And in the end, my goal is just to help reduce violations. We just want to help individuals not commit any more crimes, to prevent further criminal justice involvement. We just want to help them improve outcomes and not just reduce recidivism, not just reduce violations, but also help improve their lives, enhance their lives, increase, as I said, access to services, engagement, and make certain that they have the resources that they need to stay out of trouble in the community. Next slide, please. So I think this is it before I hand it over to Megan. And this is Intercept 3, which is the jail part. And then Megan's going to take over on the specialty court part. So Oakland County Jail, what happens, and this is important to know for our providers, Oakland County Jail has a screening process. So they have a staff, a case management staff, and they are staffed at the Oakland County Sheriff Program Services. It's a civilian department. They're not deputies, but it is run by the sheriff's department. And what they do is they triage individuals at their initial booking. So when an individual is arrested, they come into the jail and they're being booked. They administer a screening tool. And based on that screening tool, individuals are referred to the program services department. And what that department does is they look at individuals' history, they do an assessment and determine whether or not they need to be referred for mental health or substance use disorder needs. They have clinical services there, which are psychiatry. And so what they'll do is they use that screening tool. And then they have casework staff that will meet with individuals after they've been referred, and they will meet with them and they'll do another interview. So it's kind of like a double, it's like a triage process. And then it's another process where they will meet with the casework staff, and the casework staff will determine whether or not they have need for contracted clinical services embedded at the jail, which again is psychiatrist, medication, psychiatric medication, or medication assisted treatment. And they also have this program called JAWS. The acronym is Jail Alliance with Supports, and it's really a short. It's a brief mental health program, and basically what it is individuals. It's completely voluntary. Individuals that are there that have mental health disorder needs can participate in this short program that will allow a possible reduction in their jail term upon completion. So for our providers, this could potentially be a really useful piece of information. If you have an individual, let's say, that got sentenced to 90 days in jail, and they have the opportunity to participate in this program, they will participate in the program, and then the JAWS staff will send notification to the judge in their from their sentence, and ask the judge if the judge would consider reducing the sentence. And to be honest, a lot of judges around the county really just want individuals to get help, to engage in services, to have the mental health intervention that they desperately need. And so a lot of judges in our county are not just focused on punitive measures, on punishing people. They don't want to fill up our jails. It costs money. And on top of it, it's COVID. So they're trying to avoid as many incarcerations as possible. But a lot of judges are very cooperative when it comes to working with JAWS, and they will say, so potentially a judge could say, certainly, I will consider reducing that jail sentence to 30 days instead of 90. Now, they don't generally do that ahead of time. They complete the program and then they send notification. But this program has been known to be successful in helping individuals reduce their jail time. And listen, we're not talking about just reducing jail time just to reduce it. We just don't want individuals that have mental health needs, substance use disorder needs. So this is specifically a mental health program. We don't want them to be sitting in jail. We want them to be in the community engaging in treatment and having their case management supports, their psychiatry supports, whatever supports that they need in the community. So this is not simply just to say, oh, hey, we don't want them to be in jail. We want them to be in the community. That's where people are most successful, not in jail. Next slide, please. So these are our liaisons that are embedded in Oakland County Jail. Some of you may have had contact with our liaisons. They are really key in working with me. I work directly with both of them. So Melissa Gregorio, she's our community liaison and reach coordinator. That stands for rapid engagement, access to community health. And she performs access eligibility screenings in the jail, and then she coordinates appointments with the provider network. She also works with individuals on the removal of barriers, housing, transportation, everything that we've talked about, clothing, food, mental health connection in a different county, whatever. And she also offers short-term follow-up. It's kind of like a short-term case management in a sense. And she does that post-jail discharge. So she will meet with an individual in the jail, and it looks a little different now during COVID, but they still meet with individuals in the jail, and Melissa will meet with them. And she basically just offers support. She offers information. She offers resources for individuals before they're released. And then also after they're released, she provides follow up. So if they want to call her or they need assistance with something, or they'd like help getting reconnected to services, she might help them get connected with us, to our customer service, to reopen with the provider of their choice, or she might help them connect directly with a provider. But she does offer that short-term follow-up, and she's really successful in making people feel like once they're released, they still have somebody that they can connect with in case they happen to find themselves in the community and in need of something emergent. And then our criminal justice resource coordinator, her name is Sarah O'Brien. She is she performs daily sheriff inmate searches for individuals that come into the jail. And what she basically does is she runs them to find out whether or not they're open with a provider, and then she will connect with the provider to let them know that their individual is currently in the jail. She also does discharge planning with inmates prior to their release, and that's really a key piece of making sure that individuals don't just get released into the community high and dry. So she's really integral in making certain that they have the resources that they need in the community when she meets with them for discharge planning. And I do a lot of connecting with Sarah and Melissa to let them know that, hey, it was brought to my attention that Jane Doe is currently in the jail. She might be released today. She might be released in 2 weeks. Sometimes Sarah's real busy and she has a list of people that she needs to meet with for discharge. But Jane Doe isn't on her list, and Jane Doe is going to be released in 2 days. Well, if Jane Doe isn't on the list for her next discharge planning meeting, then she and Melissa will coordinate to see if one of them is able to meet with Jane Doe to make sure that she's not released into the community without the resources that she needs, without help, without connecting to her provider, without making sure that, or without what she needs to make sure that she has somewhere to go and something to do. And so Sarah and Melissa, they coordinate with each other, but they are really integral to my position as well in the coordination of resource connection and follow-up. Next, please. So now I'm going to hand it over to Megan Hebert. She is our liaison, our mental health court liaison at the 45th District Court Mental Health Court. Megan?
Thanks, Jody. Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Hebert, and like Jody mentioned, I am the liaison for the Mental Health Court, which is located at the 45th District Court in Oak Park. Today, I'm going to be talking about our specialty courts, which are located within Oakland County. The Mental Health Court, which is currently located at the 45th District Court in Oak Park, has been in place for just over 3 years. We are actually the only mental health court in Oakland County. Our specialty court is for individuals who have been charged with a misdemeanor crime and have a mental health diagnosis. Individuals who also have a substance use disorder or a developmental disability are also potentially eligible to join. One key thing with our program is that it is voluntary to join. All participants must live in Oakland County, and we can take transfer cases from other district courts within and outside of Oakland County. Once individuals are sentenced to the mental health court, they go through a 4-phase intensive probation program. The beginning is more intensive, with the final phase not requiring our participants to basically attend review hearings, but maintain sobriety and continue with treatment. Our program requires that individuals complete weekly drug and alcohol testing, attend review hearings 1 to 2 times a month, depending on which phase they're in, participate in treatment including individual and/or group psychiatric services, case management, and comply with all medication. They also must meet with our probation case manager and myself 1 or 3 times a month and follow obviously all program and court rules. Participants will be in our specialty court typically around 12 to 24 months, depending on their criminal charges, treatment needs, and how many sanctions or how well they've done in our program. Our program is really similar to probation, if any of you guys have had experience with, individuals that have been placed on probation, but with some modifications. Sanctions or violations are given, but we pride ourselves in providing a more supportive place for individuals. When a participant relapses or picks up a new charge, we work with them to try to figure out what extra support they need or modifications to try and get them in a better place and figure out what else they need to just kind of regroup and get back to where they were before. We try to use jail as a last resort for all violations, and if it's ordered, we typically only do a few days, with the most being 10. Thanks to grant funding, we are able to cover a lot of different things that individuals may need. One big concern for people that are on probation is covering the cost of drug testing. We are able to cover that cost, including those that are placed on handheld devices or tethers. Some of our participants we've found struggle to cover their cost of therapy, whether it's a high deductible or they require some type of more specialized treatment to meet their needs. This is another area where we can provide some assistance depending on obviously the cost of the treatment and how frequent they need to go. In the past, we've also been able to purchase planners, alarm clocks, water bottles, things like that, just to basically better the lives of our individuals or provide them with some type of extra support. As our participants attend review hearings, they are also given incentives for progress and phase advancement. Once a participant completes our programs, we have a small graduation ceremony at a review hearing to celebrate their success. They're given a certificate by the judge, they have an opportunity to speak, and we usually have some treats just to show how proud we are of them. We always say once a person comes into mental health court, they are, with us for life. They know that basically they can call me at any time with any questions that come along the road, whether that's trying to find treatment, therapy, or just needing someone to talk to or some type of support. They're well aware that they can call us at any point. In addition to the incentives that I touched on, individuals who join our mental health court may also be able to have their criminal charges dismissed and or kept off their record if they successfully graduate. We are also able to waive some fines and costs if their criminal charges are out of our district court in Oak Park. My role within the team is to provide assistance and education, not only to our participants, but also to the treatment court team. I initially complete the eligibility screening and to see if an individual is eligible for the program, and I talk with them about being a potential participant. Because our program is voluntary, we make sure that each participant has the information needed to make the best determination if they can do our program while still going to work and complete their daily living things that they need to do. Once a person is admitted to our program, from there I assist with getting individuals into treatment if needed, if they're not already in treatment, I should say, coordinate with their treatment team on a regular basis, and then provide assistance with resources. Oftentimes we have individuals who struggle with finding transportation or maybe need to reapply for Medicaid or need housing or assistance with finding food banks. That's something that I can do whenever needed. While they're in our program, I meet with them on a weekly to monthly basis to check in and basically ensure, like I mentioned, all their treatment needs and other needs are being met. Another big part of my role is that I attend our team meetings and review hearings, which are twice a month. During our meetings, we discuss how each participant is doing. At that time, I'm able to advocate for someone and educate the court on what may be going on with someone's mental health. Since the pandemic, we've been handling things obviously a little bit different. We're still doing review hearings over Zoom, and unfortunately, because we cannot resume face-to-face meetings, I am talking with participants on a weekly to biweekly basis. We found that a lot of our participants don't have the ability to use Zoom, so we're just doing things over the phone, basically. They call into most of our review hearings. Some are able to use the app, others are not. Our mental health court cannot be effective without you guys, the providers. You provide the most support for our participants and are basically our guide for what treatment is recommended. Each participant in our program, we typically have a standard that they should go to therapy at least twice a month. But from there, we talk with the therapist and say, hey, what do you guys think they need? Do they need weekly? Do they need a group? Do they need to go to some type of support group like NA, that kind of a nature? So without you guys, we kind of make the best judgment that we think is needed, but we really depend on you to help us assist in deciding what's best for our participants. Oftentimes we've found that critical information is left out on either side, whether that's we haven't been told everything that we need to know, or maybe you guys don't know everything that you need to know to better support somebody. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with several case managers and therapists at all of our providers. Being able to work together as a team has helped a lot of our participants stay on track, get proper treatment, graduate from our program, and then not return, which is amazing. Our main goal of our mental health court is to provide individuals with services and resources to reduce the likelihood of returning to the criminal justice system. The mental health court is intended to give individuals an opportunity to seek treatment, utilize services and resources, and have a team of professionals working with them at all times. Next slide. Another specialty court that we have within Oakland County is the 6th Circuit Court Adult Treatment Courts. The liaison for this program is Heather Willis. Her contact info, as you can see, is on the slide, and if needed, she can answer specific questions at the end of our presentation. For those of you that are familiar with one or both the courts, we are somewhat fairly similar with some differences. Participants in this specialty court must have a substance use diagnosis and be charged with a felony crime, along with obviously residing in Oakland County. In order to be part of the adult treatment court, someone must be sentenced at the beginning of their legal matters. Now, the adult treatment court is able to take some transfer cases if an individual goes back in front of their judge due to a violation. The adult treatment court has developed a specific track that is geared towards individuals who have been diagnosed not only with a substance use disorder, but also a mental health disorder. In addition, to provide some additional support, men and women who join the program are kept separate and actually have different judges. The liaison's role is also very similar to my role within the program. She completes the access screening to determine eligibility, provides them with different treatment options, and continued support while they're in the program. The liaison is an integral part of the team and attends all review hearings. She does a lot of what I do in regards to advocating for her individuals, providing them with support, and updating the team regarding the participants, how they're doing, if there's a need that's come up that may be affecting why they've relapsed or if something else has come up. The adult treatment court strives to rehabilitate individuals and then successfully reintegrate them into the community. Oftentimes throughout my time talking with our providers, I found that some people get confused with the adult treatment court and the mental health court. We do have some differences, but one big difference is that to remember that the adult treatment court is for felony crimes, which is done at circuit court, versus the mental health court is for misdemeanor crimes. So try to keep that in mind so that way, because I know people get confused. We are similar, but that's one of the main differences. Next slide. We wanted to talk briefly about releases of information. Having a current and up-to-date release of information is vital for those that are involved with the criminal justice system. Being able to communicate with probation and parole often prevents violations and assists with helping individuals get the treatment needed. It's really important, especially that we have found, I know at least in our program, that if I struggle to get updates from our therapist, it really affects the judge's decision on whether or not we move participants into the next phase, which gets them closer to getting off probation. So making sure that we have these releases signed is so important in helping our participants and individuals that are in the criminal justice system get the support that they need and just, get back to living, back to their lives without having to deal with probation. As the individual moves through the sequential intercept model, the contact person can often change. Specifically, individuals who are working with MDOC frequently change to a different probation officer's caseload. So as you guys meet with your individuals on your caseload, it might be helpful to try and think ahead of maybe who maybe needs to be added or removed from the release. It may also be beneficial to make changes when you're updating paperwork, like someone's crisis plan or individual plans of service, because at that point, they could have maybe moved from, like Jody has mentioned, pretrial to now actually being placed on probation. Or maybe they were with Royal Oak, but their case was transferred over to the 45th District Court in Oak Park. So that would change in regards to who the contact person would be. On the slide, you can see that there are some potential entities who may be beneficial to add to an individual's release, such as Common Ground, PreTrial Services, Community Corrections, and possibly even their attorney. These are just some suggestions that might be helpful for you guys to keep in mind, but obviously you take these back to your team and talk with, how your company or team would like you to handle the different releases of information. Next slide. The last thing we really wanted to touch on is just our outcome goals. And I know if you've been on any of our other justice webinars, I believe you've probably seen this slide at the beginning or the end of presentations. These are our main goals that we're trying to accomplish to better support individuals in our systems and outside of our systems as well. We're hoping that we can reduce the number of people with mental illness booked into jail, shorten the length of stay for people with mental illness in jails, increase service and support connections for those in jail with mental illness and or substance use, lower rates of recidivism. These are cross-system goals in hopes to improve an individual's quality of life. Next slide. Here's our contact information. So if you ever have any questions if you need to get in touch with Jody or myself, feel free. You can use our emails or our phone numbers. And if you go back throughout the presentation, we also had the contact information for the other liaisons as well. This concludes the presentation. If you guys have any questions, we can open up the floor to either take yourself off mute or enter them into the chat.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Jody. I don't have any questions in the chat, but I'm going to give it a few minutes. Feel free to unmute yourself or use the raise the hand feature if you have any questions regarding anything that Jody and Megan covered. You guys might have done such a good job that there's just no questions left to ask. All right, then. Well, I will stop the recording here. We'll stay on for a few more minutes. We have a question from Nicole. Is there currently availability at the 45th Mental Health Court?
Hi, Nicole. Do you mean for someone to potentially join?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so if I had an individual who I thought would be a good candidate for it, I just know sometimes usually with specialty courts, especially during this pandemic, that they've been getting kind of full into capacity.
No, actually, we are not at capacity, so we can definitely take an individual. The caveat is we, are always willing to screen somebody to see if they're eligible. Sometimes it's just a matter of if their original court is willing to transfer the case to us. So, someone can have an interest in joining our court, but if their judge is not willing to transfer their probation to us, unfortunately, there's not much we can do, but we definitely have openings. Our capacity is up to 50. So we haven't reached that point yet. So, they're more than welcome to either you can reach out to me if you need more information, or if the individual has questions, they can always reach out to us.
Okay, and then if they were to reside in Wayne County but worked in Oakland County, I know sometimes that there's a little leeway with that. Is that the same for the 45th Court as well?
To be honest, I don't think so. I could check with our coordinator, but typically they have to reside in Oakland County because that's where they would get the treatment. But I can always, it doesn't hurt to ask, because we've had people ask us questions like that. And so I never just say no. I kind of wait for guidance from as they're the ones who wrote the grant, and it's kind of, their decision as to what we do. But I can reach out to them and talk with them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat. I did put the link for where the recording will be housed at. Usually within a week or so, we get the recording up, but all of our webinars are linked there. And then I think if we don't have any other questions, Megan, Jody, we can stay on for a few minutes, but we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar here. Thank you guys very much.